everybody, welcome back to the channel. And today we have a quick video on how to update the firmware of your MTP60 transmitter. Wisycom just released version 2.0 of the firmware for the MTP60, which provides the awesome feature of being able to wirelessly sync timecode into the MTP60 over Bluetooth from a tentacle sync box. But to do that, you have to be on 2.0. So let's take a look at how to update that firmware. First off, if you're a Mac user, the Wisycom Manager software that we're using to do this, which is available on the Wisycom site as a free download, is only for Windows. So if you're running an older Intel-based Macintosh, try using Boot Camp Assistant, which comes on the Macintosh. That may get you up and running on Windows very, very quickly. We have 16-inch MacBook Pros era 2019 Intel-based, and within a couple of hours we had Windows 10 running on these two computers to run Wisycom Manager. If you're using Apple Silicon, there's a few more hoops to jump through. You'll need something like Parallels, which is a virtual environment, to then install Windows into. But either way, it's not a huge lift. Wisycom Manager is a great piece of software, not just for maintaining the firmware on your devices, but it also lets you scan from receivers, save frequencies, do frequency coordination, push frequencies back to your receivers, all of that. So it's a comprehensive piece of software. All we're going to look at today, though, is how to install the new firmware on the MTP60. So without further ado, let's dive in and have a look at that. So let's head over now to our browser. First thing we're going to do is we're going to go to wisycom.com, go into the support section, into the downloads folder, and under all products, we're going to select the MTP60. Scroll down here, MTP60, and for types, just to make this fast, we'll just hit firmware and submit that, and this will bring up our firmware. All right, so we want to download the MTP60 version 2.0 firmware. Hit the download button. That's downloaded into our downloads folder. At this point, we can minimize our browser and pull up our Finder. Go in here, you can see we've got a zip file. We want to expand that. And we'll just expand it to the same place. So now we have our XUPF file, which is our firmware file. Okay, so now that we've got that expanded, we can minimize those windows and we can bring up our Wisycom Manager. So this is the interface of our Wisycom Manager. This is the main active device window. This is where you will see the status of all the monitoring of a particular device. Over here on the right-hand side, you'll have a list of active devices, and down here you'll have a list of devices that are discovered but not yet active. So let's go ahead and connect up our MTP60, and to do that, we're just going to take a simple USB cable. We are going to open up the MTP60, and in the USB connector here on the bottom, we're just going to insert that cable. The MTP60 is going to power up, and then we'll go over to our discoverable devices and click the little magnifying glass for it to discover the MTP60. We can see we've discovered it here. So we're going to click this little checkbox and use the up arrow to move the MTP60 from discovered into our active device list. Once we have the MTP60 in our active device list, we can then perform a firmware update. So we're going to click up here to firmware update. It knows we have an MTP60 in here, so we're going to select our extracted file. So we'll hit select file. That brings up this dialog box. I have already done a firmware update, so it has in here that it thinks I have a version of 2.0, but this may be blank for you or may have your previous firmware in here. So we're going to click the import to import our firmware file, go into our downloads folder, select our firmware file, click open and import that file in. Again, that warning that popped up was because I had previously done installs of version 2.0 of the software. So it was just saying I already had it. But you'll want, of course, verify that you've got 2.0, hit OK. And then to perform the update, you'll see that it says MTP60, the boot version, and the app version. This is the firmware version that's currently on here. We want to upgrade to 2.0, which is here. We just hit the play button. You'll see that the display blanks out and we get a couple of blue LED indicators on the MTP60, which means that it's in progress of updating the firmware. So we're just going to wait as it extracts the firmware, and we'll come back to this in a minute. So once it's done erasing the device, it's going to begin programming the new firmware into the device. And again, we're going to just wait and let thing. Once the device programming is complete, the MTP60 display will come back on. We can close this out. And we do have to wait for the MTP60 then to go through its upgrade process. So we do not want to disturb the MTP60 while it's going through this and upgrading. So we can just simply unplug the MTP60 now, and we will plug it back in. And we're just going to redo the discovery process on Wisycom Manager. And we're going to drop our MTP60 into our active panel. And now you can see that the firmware has been updated to 2.0. So that's how you update the firmware in your MTP60 using Wisycom Manager. The other thing that you can do, of course, is to use Wisycom Manager to update the firmware of your receivers. And you can also use it to update the firmware of your non-USB transmitters by connecting something like an MCR54, which has infrared on it, by connecting an MCR54 using the USB port, and then using the infrared port as the connection to your, let's say your MTP40S transmitters. So that's also an option. Anyway, we hope you found this video helpful, and if you did, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel for more great content like this. And as always, happy recording.